Well, here we are.
Here we are.
This is Gunnar with Realty Growth, and back here hosting the Real Growth podcast. And we have a really awesome guest today. Someone who's become a good friend of mine over the last few years, and has an awesome business in the area, Companion Acres. Please, everyone, welcome Allison Kocak.
Hey, everybody.
How does it feel to be here? This is your first. Oh, well, no, it's not your first podcast. We were just talking beforehand, I guess. But
no, it is my first podcast that I've been on. But
okay, you've been listening to podcasts.
Yes, diligently.
So, how does it feel to be hot seat? I remember when I sat there, we got the lights and the cameras, and
yeah, it's definitely surreal when you've spent the last 3 years like studying people on podcasts and never. I mean, I honestly didn't even think it was in the cards.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, and I'm thinking back to my podcasts that have been inspirational and kind of career changing for me, or ways that have changed the way that I view something or see something.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And I think that's, and that's one of the goals with this podcast, with Real Growth, is we're just trying to do, it's just in the name. We're just trying to find, business owners, cool people in the area that have a growth story, and kind of just, we've all got our own story, but really awesome growth stories, business growth, personal growth. And that's the thing that, like you said, when you're looking around, that's what people care about. People want little tidbits, and they want to know more about you and your journey and kind of how you became who you are. So I think that's kind of the best way, I think, to start, is just introduce yourself a little bit, and then tell us about your background. Where do you come from? And then, kind of how did it lead you into owning a business like you do today?
Yeah. Great start. So my husband and I moved to Rochester in 2015. And it was kind of a pivotal change for us because I left a full-time job, and we kind of came here on the whims of my husband's occupation. Got into teaching in a school and teaching at a dance studio, and also started our family. And so that was going great, loved what I did. And thought, during the summers off of teaching, it'd be really cool to have a summer job to bring in some supplemental income. And I thought, with our first baby, I'm I would love to not to spend the summer with my baby. And I heard over the radio, about this app where you could walk dogs. And I'm like, cool, I'm gonna be a dog walker. And, grab the stroller and whatnot. And so I was doing that during the summers. We got pregnant again with our second, and I started doing the math. And to have 2 kiddos in childcare while I was teaching, I did the math, and my net at the end of the day was $10.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I loved teaching, but I didn't love it that much.
Yeah. Right.
And so what the easy math was, I could walk 1 dog and make $20 rather than teach all day with 2 kids in daycare and make $10.
Sure.
So that's when we kind of just were let's just try this. And, my license wasn't going anywhere. So kind of had that to fall back on. And honestly, another big piece of it was having my husband's income to kind of fall back on. I could take this huge risk in my life and know that he was kind of the rock in our finances.
Yeah.
And not that we had a lot, but you still have a mortgage and groceries and gas,
right.
regardless of, any other stuff. So
nice to have a stable income stream.
Yeah.
I know that's common with a lot of entrepreneurs. Is I think that's what a lot of them would say, is having their spouse, whether it's to, in your case, I mean, it's every case different, but whether it's to just watch the kids or to kind of be the primary, pay the bills income, having that support, kind of talk about that a little bit. I'm sure that's been huge just to allow you to pursue your dreams and kind of go into this.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, we, Companion Acres wouldn't be what it is today without the ability for my husband to care for all of our personal finances because everything that the business brought in, I was able to reinvest in the business for years. And like, I can't say this enough, like that wouldn't have been possible if my business had to pay for the mortgage or the hospital bills or, you know, the things that come up in everyday life.
Sure.
And so it just provided that ability to grow.
Yeah.
And to take some financial risks that may not have taken, and for it to be able to grow in the amount of time. So Companion Acres became official in 2018, and to be where we are in 2023, that's pretty fast growth as far as like businesses go.
Yeah, right. And it sounds like even more business discussions being had and different ventures and different ideas. And I think sounds like you maybe have a little bit of an announcement. We'll get to that a little bit later.
Perfect.
But before we kind of keep talking a little bit about Companion Acres and where you're at with the business, if you don't mind, you said you moved it to Rochester in 2015. If you don't mind, just for everyone's knowledge a little bit, kind of talk a little bit talk a little bit about pre-2015, you know, where'd you grow up?
Yeah.
Kind of what, you know, it sounded like you were into teaching right away. What kind of spurred you to get down that path? If we go even further in the rearview mirror.
Sure. Yeah. So I was in like growing up, my hobby was dance. So I would go to school and kind of do what I can to make it to the end of the day until I could go to the dance studio. But also enjoyed like kiddos. So when I turned 16, my first job was in Parks and Recreation. And that's all I did. I never did like fast food. I never did like retail or anything. It was like I was always on the soccer field coaching soccer or running a kids camp or I've never played tennis in my life, but I did coach a tennis class. No, so like kids was like my jam, and dance was my jam. And so bless my mom's heart, but she was like, you will not go to college for dance. And like now being an adult and knowing knowing how to see numbers, like, okay, college costs this much and a career in dance will pay you this much, doesn't make sense.
Yeah, right. You want to encourage your kids to follow their dreams. Certainly. I know you have kids now. I've got a kid.
And she didn't tell me to stop dancing. So what we did is we found, I went to the University of Wisconsin River Falls where they had two things. One, a really great teaching degree. And two, they had a really great dance company on campus. What was cool is that the person who led that was so networked into the dance world in the Twin Cities, where she brought choreographers from the cities too. So it's like I almost got a taste of what that world would be while also, you know, going to school for teaching and whatnot. And and then out of college, I got my first job at it was a public arts magnet school in downtown Minneapolis.
Okay.
Right.
And I guess so real quick so what town did you grow up in at first? You said you went to River Falls for college.
Yep, Shoreview.
Shoreview. Is that in Wisconsin?
Nope, Shoreview's in Minnesota. It's north of St. Paul.
Okay. Shoreview, Minnesota. Gotcha. All right. So you went to college.
Yep.
And then
And then taught in Minneapolis. Our first home was in Columbia Heights. Nice. And we're notorious for picking some fixer-uppers. So we got this like cute little house off of Reservoir Boulevard in an old neighborhood. Fixed that up. And then the school that I was teaching at was switching over from a public arts magnet school to a Minneapolis public school. And because I wasn't tenured, I had only been teaching there for 2 years when this change was happening, I wasn't guaranteed my job. And like within that same week, my husband was offered this job down in Rochester. And it was like, well, here I am, like my job isn't guaranteed. And my husband like could grow his career by making this shift.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a no-brainer. And he like kind of sold me. He was like, you could do whatever you wanted. And I'm like, oh, could I? Okay.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
So, and it was so funny because actually when we met, he lived in Rochester and I lived in the cities. And I remember thinking like, there's no way I'm moving to this podunk town. But like
this podunk town.
growing up in the cities, like that's just what you think about like anything outside of the cities.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure I've heard that.
And so, he made a lateral career move to Wayzata Country Club because he works in the golf course industry. And so he made a lateral move. We bought our Minneapolis house, and then, things kind of happened and we ended up in this place where I told myself I would never be.
Nice.
Here.
Okay.
And
so that was 2015 now then when he.
Yep. So we got married and moved down here, and
Nice. Okay. Awesome. And then that leads us right into where we're at. So then obviously, Companion Acres, you started just with, hey, I got some free time in the summers, want to be able to make some money, did some dog walking.
Yep.
Thought, hey, this is kind of interesting. Maybe I can make something out of this. So then, talk about that progression and then what, so when you started Companion Acres then, or started your, what's now obviously full blown, pet care, boarding and everything like that. Well, where did it start? And I know a little bit about this, but tell me about the start of that.
Yeah. And then, so I started walking dogs on the app, and then it just got to the point where I had so much that I needed help, and it's tricky with legalities with getting help and being on this app. And so I had to register an LLC to do things with employees and get better insurance and protect myself a little bit more legally. So then I started with one employee and
still going through the app at this point. Okay, so
no. I had to move off of the app to have the employee.
So now people are texting and getting a hold of you to walk their dogs.
Yep. Sure. And that was really hard. The transition from me helping my clients to sending someone else to helping my clients.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that I can say this on camera, so just edit this out if it's like so inappropriate. But I'm not gonna lie to you. This is how I felt like a pimp. Right. Like sending somebody else to somebody else's home to like do a service. Like I felt managing somebody else's schedule made me feel a little uncomfortable.
Sure.
Which is
it's a whole
weird.
New world. It's a whole new world.
Yep. So again, edit that out if we can't say pimp on a podcast.
Well, I guess I don't know if we could say pimp. I don't know what the word is on that. But I think I get what you're saying though about like people are getting a hold of you and want your services, and you felt uncomfortable with, maybe sending someone else in to do it, even though it's you, it's still you.
It's still like my.
I think
like,
you see that now as a business
do.
owner.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's like these people are an extension of you, your company.
Yes, and that's how you scale.
Yeah. Yep.
But for a teacher who like never even thought about that, like it was a whole new idea.
Yeah.
And so we, before we started talking about like podcasts or whatnot. So, once I had registered the business and had an employee, like I entered a whole new language of things. And I needed answers. And so, I had a brief moment of thought where it's like, well, I should go back to school for business because, we kind of are trained to think like, oh, if you want to become something, then you go to school for this.
Yep.
Like that is like our way of thinking. And I actually started following Rachel Hollis was kind of my big mentor, just because I gravitated towards her stuff because she started her business, or her tagline is that she started her business just by Googling things. Like everything she figured out is because she Googled it. no college degree or anything like that. And so, she would bring people on her show that she would interview. And when I like listened to a podcast and found somebody that was like, oh, there was so much content in that podcast that was tactical, then I would then follow their podcast. And so I kind of assembled my team of podcastees that I followed for information. And then, when I would find something that I would need, then I could like listen to podcasts. Like if I was mulling over something and I needed to know like how people talk about it, what are the languages that they use, what are their reasonings behind this, then I could search for particular podcasts to listen to.
Yeah.
And there was a finance guy that I listened to, and I can't remember his name and I can't remember how he described it, but there is a thought out there that if you listen to podcasts and audiobooks while you're in the car, while you're walking, while you're like doing something else, there's like this name for a degree. I want to call it like the amount of time that you spend in a car. Like I think it's called the 10-year degree, where it's like you can gain the equivalent amount of knowledge in 10 years if like you just like strategize your like how do I want to say this? If you like structure what you're listening to.
You hit it on the head, the concept of, we have a society where, you're taught, go to school, educate yourself in some area, and then go out in the world and produce. Well, what if you don't exactly know what you want to do? What if things change, right? Like in your case, you're on the teaching path, and then, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I've got a business on my hands or an idea for a business on my hands. And like, I think that is awesome. And I would say that probably there's a lot of people listening who have kind of, maybe been doing that. Maybe they've been educating themselves through podcasts and YouTube, and maybe don't feel, I think this is something I can personally relate to, is sometimes you do that and you still question like, what, am I missing something? Is this straightforward enough? But I think if you're resourceful enough like you, and you just find topics that relate to, what do I really want to learn right now? I'm dealing with this stress or this problem in my real life right now. I'm going to go find some resources and information to help me with that. Yeah. And I think that's so powerful because we have so much access to information in this day and age. Right. And like, especially in business, right? I think you're the perfect example of that now is like, you don't need to go get a business degree. And I'm not saying that that's not always the path, or maybe I think if there were a path, or if you needed an MBA or something, you would know. You'd have a job where, maybe it opens certain doors. But as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, like, you don't need any certificate from somewhere that says that you're, now smart enough or trained well enough to do this. Like you just need to figure out what you need to figure out for your own business. And I think that's awesome. That was when you and I actually met. For those that don't know, so I'm Gunnar. I work with Realty Growth. I'm a commercial real estate agent here. And when Allison and I crossed paths was when 2020, when you reached out to take a look at the Hench's Electric building just a little bit further south of here. So talk a little bit about that and what made you finally realize, hey, I need a location, and started that search for you.
Yeah. So with our house being this business represented as a home, welcoming, and wanting people to make my house feel like their house, I started feeling like a prisoner in our house, making myself always available to my clients. I would go to Target and get a text that somebody was there to drop off their dog, and I'd have anxiety, and I'd throw whatever I needed and just run home from Target to serve my clients. Couldn't get away from it, really. And so we were planning our next child and knew that, okay, in order to keep the business going, we needed to find commercial space. So I was actually walking a dog downtown and walked by the glass electric place, and there was a sign for a Realty Growth sign with the phone number, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to sound like an idiot, but I'm going to call and I'm just going to ask, like how much. And so the lovely lady who answered was like, oh, well, I'll have, Bucky get in touch with you. And so we set up a tour from there. And that's where Gunnar and I met on the tour of that place. And I mean, I know nothing about getting into the real estate market, but was full of questions. And actually, I think on that tour, like both my kids were there and my husband, and we're like, what are we doing here? But I mean, you have to start somewhere and you have to start asking questions to start learning.
Yeah.
And so that obviously just wasn't going to work for a number of reasons, but we had to learn that.
Yeah.
And so Gunnar and I were connected then. He knew what I was looking for. After that, asked me more questions. We looked at another property that was closer to my house. It was a rental. And just didn't have enough space outside for what we were looking for. I love it when we can have dogs outside. I like being outside. So I just think it's a better mood for everybody.
Yeah.
And two, I told him, I'm like, a rental, like I would love to own.
Yeah.
But obviously you get what you're served. So I want to keep exploring all options. So then after that, we explored. There was a 20-acre property behind our house. This is now January of 2021. Yep. We started chasing after that. Did all the research on, how to change like a residential zoning to business zoning. Do you zone it as agriculture? Do you zone it as veterinary? Like all the questions.
Well, and I think that's what's cool. Like, in the commercial world, and that you just don't realize until you start doing it, is all these different pieces and I learned that parts that go into it.
There's like business A1, there's business A2, like there's all this jargon. It's like, so you really need to ask the questions.
Yeah.
But the day we were writing our offer on that property, Gunnar got a notice that somebody was coming in like full cash, and I was like, I'm out.
Yeah. Wasn't the right spot.
Yep. And then after that, we found the
Corona Club.
Yeah, an abandoned golf course, which had all the space in the world. It was in a beautiful location, a big wide open indoor area, a possible second building on site, and ended up with 1,000,001 hurdles with that location.
Yeah, big learning experience on the Corona Club for both of us.
Yeah, seriously.
Just, that was for those that don't know, we're talking about the Meadow Lakes golf course, which is just if you continue on 2nd Street all the way west past the country club and everything like that, there's this golf course that's been sitting there for I don't know, years. I don't know how long, for years. Mm-hmm. There's no tenant in there. And, but like Allison said, it's a nice enough building, a lot of land. And we thought, hey, this could be cool. Mm-hmm. Well, little did we realize, the whole place is in a flood zone, right?
So you couldn't put up any fencing. So if we were, I was running through ideas of if I wanted to have the dogs outside, I'd have to have them one at a time on leash. Yep. And I'm for it. The space is so beautiful. I'm like, okay, we're going to do it. There's a door here, and we're going to leash them up here, and we're going to go for nature walks. And but at the end of the day, the owner of the property wanted to develop it sooner than so we were playing with a 5-year lease in all of our meetings.
Yep.
And they wanted to change it sooner than 5 years, so they backed out of all of our deals, which at the end of the day is fine, because that was going to be a lease. And being where I'm at now, but not knowing it at the time, it just fit our finances better to have a property that we owned rather than leased. Because the Meadow Lakes building hadn't been used in a really long time. There was a lot that needed to be done to it.
A lot of build out. We had to get an architect in there to start planning.
So being a year into a space that I own, looking back at, I was looking at possibly putting $100,000 into our first year of renovations on a rental space that in 5 years the owner was going to tear down anyways.
Right.
And so like, you know, little Allie who was crying in 2021 when like the whole deal went bust, like I'm laughing at now because it's like it couldn't have worked out better.
Yeah, right. No, exactly. I mean, and you just don't know. And we were talking offset a little bit about like your story, and you talk about how that after the Corona Club, and that when that fell through, that was hard. That was really hard.
It was really hard because that's what I was working for. That was the goal. That was the dream. That was the vision. And then it like, with one phone call, like my vision and my like direction of my business was gone.
Yeah.
I think I went on LoopNet and I was like, is there anything else right now? And there was nothing. And I don't know what, like, why LoopNet doesn't look like Zillow, I have no idea, but it doesn't. Like, and ladies, it's so hot. Like, ladies my age are like, did you see on Zillow like this? I'm like, yeah, I saw on Zillow that. Like, Zillow's like the new.
Yeah. Like, LoopNet doesn't quite.
Oh, LoopNet. I don't understand LoopNet.
Yeah. But that was hard. And I remember you saying, like, you know, at that point you were like, I don't remember what the exact deadline was, but you said, you know, Gunnar, at this point, I need to have some sort of deadline, and like if we can't find something by this time, I just don't know if I have to rethink if I even want to do this. Right. And so, you know,
and that week it was seriously like down to the wire of like, I'm like preparing my employees for like this announcement that I'm going to make to my clients, just being like, hey, like, it's been a good run. We love you, but like, you know, we got to do this for our family. And, and
crazy how that works, isn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, in my head, I just got distracted with the side thought. So we started our business from our home, and like I was raising 2 kids.
Yeah.
I have a text on my phone. So we're like out in the country. So the way that we potty trained my son is we just sent him outside without pants.
Okay. All
so
right.
my clients,
some parenting tips.
So like my clients were like, I have this like text from like this gentleman who had just dropped off his dog, and he's like, hey, so you know your son's outside without pants on. And I screenshotted it and sent it to his wife, and she's like, never delete that message.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, yeah, I know. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for telling me.
And I like that's just like it's funny, but like that kind of like privacy thing was like always not like my life was a fishbowl for my clients. You know, like I'm having a bad day and you're at my home. Like my kid's having a bad day. So it was like when I say like we had a deadline, like we were gonna be done.
Yeah.
Because we were so like maxed out emotionally.
Yeah. I mean, and now like, you know, we did the market update. So for people that don't know where Allison's at, we can post that information and go check her out. It's an awesome spot now. But yeah, so that's like what I was saying off camera was like, it's like the story of, if anyone pictures that diagram where there's the person digging for gold, and you in the picture can see that if they just dug like another foot, there's a whole bunch of gold right there, and it shows the guy turning around, throwing in the towel. And like, that's what comes to mind when I think of this situation is like, we had been digging for so long and got so close, and it was at the point of like, is it even worth continuing going on? And then obviously it was, and it worked out perfectly the way it was supposed to.
Yeah. So I got a call from Gunnar, and he said, hey, it was a Realty Growth property that was going to go on the market. And it was Bucky's property. And so Gunnar was like, I think this might be a good fit. Do you want to come check it out? And so I loaded up the kids and we went and looked at the property. And I went home that night and I seriously took out like a piece of notebook paper, a ruler, and some colored pencils. And I thought about all the things that I wanted in a day with the dogs. I wanted them to be outside. I wanted an indoor play place. I wanted small groups of dogs. So what we have at our facility is like these half walls that keep our dogs in small groups. So we have the dogs in groups of anywhere from 3 to 5 in their pods. And so those are their friends for the day, and they go outside and inside. So we needed the pods, and then we needed the hallways to like keep them away from the dogs that they don't get along with. And we needed an area to do baths. We needed an area to feed. I needed a spot to, I knew I wanted to do retail and kind of have like a small boutique. So could I fit that in there? And it all fit in this space. And so we came back for another look and then started plowing away at the legalities and the deals and
getting the bankers involved.
Talk to the builder. Like, what do you think? Like, you know, what's a priority? What's not a priority? Is it worth it? You know, all the stuff. And at the end of the day, like everything worked out. There were times where we didn't know if it was going to work out.
Right.
Because we had, I mean, even with this, like what ended up being perfect property, we still ran into hurdles that we had to overcome. And we did it. And
happened the way it was supposed to. And
it did.
Awesome.
It did. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so now talk about like where you're at now. And like, I mean, oh my goodness, right? What a crazy couple years, and going, you know, not, you know, it wasn't that many years ago that you hardly had a business or just started walking dogs, and now you have your own location in town. It is detached, so now you've got your home and your house back, and like talk about, just share a little bit into your mind now of like how do you feel having that balance, and what's it done for you and your family?
I'm not gonna lie to you. I still bring my work home with me. It's so nice. Like, so when we do long-term boarding, it's so nice. Like dogs that are there with us for like a week or 2 weeks. It's nice to have a day off. So our house was outfitted for dogs, or we outfitted our house for dogs. So it's like we still have the space and the outdoor space. It's like, okay, you need a quiet day. Why don't you come back home with me? And so they come home with me, and they can take a day off. And I describe it like it's the same for humans. Like a lot of a good thing is still a lot. You know, you know, it's like every day at Valley Fair, like, you get pretty tired.
Well, that's I think what I'm trying to ask too is like, you look at yourself and like,
but it's nice having the control.
Like
I have the control over that, rather than like, I'm just always available for you.
Right.
Mi casa es su casa.
Well, so that's, I think what I want to keep pressing on. So is like, so you now found that, you know, you've got the control and you've got it separate from the house, but we're still, you know, you still use the space. But like, you're still going. You just had a new kid, right? So you're a mom, you're a wife, you got 3 babies, you got a business, and like you know, I've gotten to know you pretty well, and like, you just get after it, Allie. So talk a little bit about like what makes you tick, and like where does this passion come from? And because it's apparent to everyone who knows you, and then now people that are gonna watch you and haven't met you, like it's clear that you've got this energy about you, and it's amazing. So just talk a little bit about that. Like, how would you put your finger on that?
So I feel like I've always had this energy. I have ADHD, so I don't stop ever. I also sleep very little. And I mean, one could look at that as, you know, like, what do you call it? Like a disability. But I really think it's a effing gift.
I was gonna say, this ain't no disability.
I know. Like, the things I can't do is a lot smaller than the things that I have done. You know? And I think it's an attitude too. And I love what I do. I love that I'm serving people. I love that I'm serving dogs. I love that, like, it's my family business. Like, this started with my kids. They still come with, like, I have a pack and play at work for my baby. And the other really cool thing about entering into, like, after getting a facility is I felt a little bit more like my business was real. Because operating out of my house, I kind of still felt like, I felt like a little girl selling lemonade at the end of her driveway.
Sure.
Like, yes, I'm legit, like, but like you're coming to my house, so I feel exposed. So there was a lot of imposter syndrome that was happening at that time. And moving to this space, everything that I've done is like, it's me. So like the way that I run my doggy daycare is very similar to like the way that somebody would have run a classroom. So like, we have activities every day. And like when you walk into our facility, there's a calendar so you can see what the activities are.
Love it.
We do birthday celebrations, and have a birthday program. We do positive reinforcement with our dogs. So we don't do like any like negative punishment. So like when we're working on like potty training and stuff, if they go potty outside, then they're rewarded with a treat. But if there's an accident inside, then there's no negative, like,
sure. Yeah.
any negative consequence. It just is, and we reward the positive. But and just approaching everything with love. And even like the hiccups that happen during the day with clients and dogs and team members, like before I approach the situation or like want to share my side, like I always come to a space of, I'm going to approach this with love.
Yeah.
Like this is a negative situation or like it wasn't ideal, but like coming from a space of love and wanting what's best for our clients and for everybody involved, like this is just what is. And how can I like, even like customer service.
Yeah.
Coming into it with listening ears on, hearing where they're coming from, because I feel like 9 times out of 10, they're not upset about the situation, but about something else. And so you kind of have to like read through the lines of like what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But might have to redirect. I think I really went off on a tangent.
No, I think, that's awesome. I mean, I think the takeaways I would take, are you're passionate, you got a lot of energy, and like you're able to maintain that because you're doing what you love. You're doing what you love.
Yeah.
With love, you're serving your kids are along with you. You're bringing them with like. It's you're doing it. You're doing it. You're rocking. I would say you're on an awesome path. And like with that being said, seeing what you've been through and kind of drawing off your experiences going from, hey, I'm just out of school and I'm going to be a teacher, and wait a minute, now I've got a big, a nice, good business that I'm passionate about on my hands. What would you say to some of maybe the younger people, or maybe not even younger, but just in a different place in terms of their business journey? Because like it can happen at any time, right? So I think what's some of the advice you would give to people that were in your shoes maybe a few years ago, where they're, got an entrepreneurial spirit and just kind of, aren't sure what the next steps are? What would some advice for them be?
Yeah, I have a lot.
Perfect.
How much time do we have left?
Yeah, no.
Now, I would feel like one thing that I heard in the podcasts that I listened to is you can't quit on a bad day. So, when things are rough and you're like, gosh, like I could easily get a job at Target working for $17 an hour and go home and, kick my feet up and not have any stress and nobody relying on me. If you're going to be done, you have to do it on a good day. That was really powerful for me, because you have the bad days and you're like, I don't have to do this. Like I'm not really making any money from it. Like, so, none of the bad days ever amounted to that for me. And the good days were always like really, really good days. Those are just powerful words to think. You can't quit on a good day.
Wise.
The other thing is, there's so much literature around this. But the most recent quote I heard to this is, "You are who you have lunch with." And some speakers call it like the temperature in a room. So if you want to be a CEO or you want to be next level, the people around you that are breathing life into you have to be at that level. But if you are, just around people who are speaking negatively and who are bad with money and, like are influence, like like when you enter a room, like you acclimate to that temperature.
Yeah,
so what room are you stepping into? Who are you listening to? And
yep. I think that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think too, like, I mean, I hate to say this, but like the finances in business are a lot. Like I think that has been like my biggest point of learning of like, in my head, I call it the profit pie. So how much is like a healthy amount for a business? Because Target doesn't tell you.
Yeah. Right.
You know, Starbucks isn't like, we spend 50% of our net on this. And, you know, like you really have to like, ask questions to people who are willing to share that with you. Like, so I asked, the owner of the dance studio that I was working for at the time, like she shared with me some of her numbers. Other small business owners shared me their numbers, and I had to make their numbers and what was comfortable for us and what worked for our family. And so to know like, okay, well, I should keep my employees at this percent of the profit pie, and this much should be on reinvesting into the business, and this should be, you know, insurance and whatnot. And so to really get a hold of those finances. One thing that I always heard was, don't ever look for the easy solution. Like, cause you can walk into any space and, buy this software and it will improve all your problems, or hire this business consultant for $400 a month and will triple your profits. It's well, what is their experience with my clients, or what is their experience in this space? Like, have they worked with dogs before? Like, do they know the market in Rochester? Like, there's so many things that you should be questioning. You know, if there's an easy fix. And, I mean, Gunnar, actually, you know what, even too, do you remember there was one space that we looked at that was $1 million in Chester.
Yes, I do.
And
was that with the racetrack?
Yes. Okay.
The racetrack one?
The realtor. So I'm like, like it's $1 million. I don't have $1 million. Like my gut is telling me like, you don't have $1 million. You can't afford this.
The cheap money.
And the realtor who was representing the property was like, $1 million, that's nothing. Take out, you know, a loan or get investors and I've invested and It's like, well, like that's great for you, but like that was like, I wasn't about that life. You know, like I wanted to own my business. I wanted to make my decisions. So like coming back, knowing my finances and knowing how I felt about money, how I felt about other people's money, being put into my business, like finances was a big one.
Well, I think like the common with everything you're kind of saying is like, first of all, you're like the definition or epitome of taking action, which I think is like without you, you know, like from the outside looking in at you, it's like you're making all this progress and getting all these things done. And like at the end of the day, there is a formula and there's a way to do it, but you just you take action. You're really good at identifying what you need, right? And knowing where to ask the questions. And like, you know, a lot of people I think sit there with a lingering problem and think, you know, what am I going to do about this? And you know, maybe hope it solves itself or something like that. Where with you, it's like, I need to learn about business finance. I'm going to go listen to this podcast. I'm going to go ask the owner of this business. I'm going to, you know, I think that is huge. And like, but also not being swayed, like in your last example, by everyone's got advice. Everyone's got advice for how you should do things best.
You learn that as a mom. I'm not going to do like, you have to do this with your kids. You have to do this with your kids. It's like,
but like
my kids are going to slide down the stairs on a dog bed.
Right.
And that's just what works for us.
Right. But to my point though, that's like, you know yourself, you know your values, you know what you're looking for. And you do a great job, I think, seeking out information and hearing others' opinions and not letting them, you know, not just taking what everyone says and running with it, but using it to just kind of add to your toolbox of knowledge.
Yep.
And I think that's huge.
Being a sponge.
Yeah, being a sponge, and then knowing, and then you know when to apply the knowledge as you as you are working with something that relates to it.
It's worked.
Yeah. So. I guess to kind of wrap up here, and we could sit here all day. You know me. I mean, I could sit here and talk to you all day. But to wrap up, Allison, plug your business a little bit, and then it sounds like you've got a cool announcement. Yeah. And maybe another venture or project you're going to work on. So just, for what we run up on the screen here, Companion Acres, how do we find you? What's your phone number, social media? And then let us know the big announcement.
I actually don't know our phone number.
Okay, so no phone number.
Because you can share contacts nowadays. So I'm never like, oh, here's our phone number.
We'll find it. And
when I need to call, work, it's on Google. Like I don't even have to dial I'm like, Google Companion Acres. So Google Companion Acres.
That's true. Google Companion Acres. Okay.
I don't know my husband's phone number. I don't know my work phone number.
It's all in the second brain. That's your phone.
Yeah. So we're on Google, and we're even getting some Google reviews. And we're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And I tried to get into LinkedIn, but I am not that cool. Someday I'll be that cool. No, and we're a daycare and boarding facility, where we do baths and whatnot. So
nice. Awesome. And then you've got an announcement,
our
right?
Big announcement.
So what's the new announcement?
I mean, literally, like, we're like, this is now like coming back to where I was in 2018, where I'm like, I have this idea. Mm-hmm. And so we're like getting the ball rolling. And it actually wasn't my idea. So I love my team, and I love everybody on my team. I love everybody that's been on my team. Like, everybody has brought something to the table of what Companion Acres is. So she is my onboarding manager, Laura, sent me a text message about PC Paws and Claws did this post about so a certain number of dogs had been returned, dogs and cats, and it was pretty heartbreaking. And she was like, "What if we opened a sanctuary for dogs?" And I'm like, "Yep, no questions asked." Like, great idea. But taking that idea, we are like, okay, like, what would this look like, and where would it go? And like, so now we're like at the beginning stages of another business, but like, let's take a business that's not a business. It's now going to be a nonprofit. Okay. And so now I'm like re-listening to my podcasts that like have fed life into me. And I'm like, okay, but now it's a nonprofit, but you have to make money, but it's a nonprofit.
Yeah,
and
right.
So it's like, okay, well, how will this work and whatnot? And so we registered. So we have an EIN. We have our first board of directors meeting on Saturday. I'm so excited. Nice. And we have a Facebook page. But the dream is, like, the ultimate vision is we want to adopt anywhere from 12 to 24 dogs. So we're going to create 12 homes within a home for these dogs. But if they have siblings, that's why we have this range. Okay. So like, if each of these dogs had a sibling or a dog that they could live with, some can't. Yeah. But 12 to 24 dogs. And the thing about sanctuaries is, like, it is like a refuge. Mm-hmm. There are several spaces up in the cities that are a rescue that are named a sanctuary, but you can readopt. Our space is going to be like the ultimate home. Okay. So we will be making a promise to these animals that, like, it's their final home. And there's a gal up in Stillwater that runs a sanctuary for over 100 dogs. Wow. And she said that one of the hardest things is that she has a social media page for her donors, so they can see, like, how great the dogs are doing and da-da-da-da. But with that, people are wondering why these happy dogs that are doing great and doing so well can't be adopted.
Sure. Okay.
But they're doing so great because they're home. They're in a space that is, like, feeding life into them. Like, why wouldn't they be happy? And so we kind of had to make that tough decision of, like, okay, if we get this dog to a place of happiness and functionality, like, do we take them and then put them back in a home after they've been rehomed for. So
Yeah,
anyways,
yeah. I can
super
see that.
big passion project.
Yeah.
And obviously like, where will this go? And, how will
Yeah.
we make money and all that stuff? But like, I think just from a business that operates out of love to then feed into a nonprofit that operates from love.
Yeah.
And wanting to do that like at home experience and knowing dogs and all this jazz. Like it just, it's a good, it's a good bridge.
Yeah. Amazing. What a great way to give back and right up the alley of who you are, Allie. And that's thanks so much just for being here and sharing about yourself. And I know the people watching are going to be fired up to just learn about you and who you are and just a little glimpse into what makes you tick. So
thanks.
Yeah, I think it's been a great privilege having you here. Thank you so much again. Thank you, everybody that's been listening. Please follow us on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube. We're Spotify, all the social medias, right? So keep tuning in. We love doing this. We love sitting here and getting awesome people like Allie in here to share their stories. So keep following us, and we'll keep bringing you guys what you want here. So awesome. Thanks again.